Hi friends, this is Anders Ibsen from Windermere Professional Partners, managing broker of Anders Ibsen Homes. If you're a North End homeowner like me, you've probably looked at the last couple of years and you thought to yourself, what a wild ride. Between the extremes of low interest rate, low supply during the COVID market, to high inflation, high mortgage rate with the current market that we're in right now, it's certainly been a period of extremes. And my goal with this video is more just breaking down what this means for our neighborhood with objective information and how this pertains to you. So why don't we start with what's probably foremost on your mind, which is property values. Where have home values gone here in the North End, and what does this mean for maybe my home? Well, the good news is that we've actually seen some modest appreciation. As of now, January 2024, the median sale price for North Tacoma is about $635,000 compared to a year ago when it was $612,000. So we actually saw a 3.5% increase in median property value here in North Tacoma in the last year. Now, that's a median for the entire North End neighborhood. And as I've said before, and I'll continue to say, that's really a misnomer because there are many North Ends. We have a myriad of different pocket neighborhoods, each with their own unique characteristics, and that also comes with their own unique price points too. So just for curiosity's sake, why don't we take a look? On the more affordable end, at least by North End standards, if you look at the Westgate neighborhood, as of now, the median sale price is about $575,000. Around the University of Puget Sound neighborhood, about $589,000. Proctor, about $625,000. The North Slope, a median sale price of $635,000. The West Slope at $810,000. That's all those view homes. Old Town, the median price is sitting right around $1 million. And the Stadium District, as of now, the median home price is about $1.18 million. Now, what's interesting is that for all those differences in North End neighborhood prices is how the North End as a whole compares to the city of Tacoma in a larger sense, because it's actually quite different. If you look at average prices for the entire city of Tacoma, we actually saw some modest depreciation. As of now in January, the median sale price for a city of Tacoma home is about $448,000 compared to a year ago when your typical Tacoma home sold for about $455,000. So a modest dip, about 1.5%, but still something very different from our neck of the woods. So why this discrepancy between our neighborhood and the rest of the city? Well, as I've said before, my theory on this is that there's safety in the middle. When you look at the majority of neighborhoods in Tacoma, most of them predominantly the main type of buyer who buys property is a first-time home buyer. And first-time buyers are unique among other buyers in the buyer pool in that, with the exception of their down payment, they mostly don't have much in the way of assets, which means as a group, they are very rate sensitive to changes in the market. So buying that $500,000 property at a 3% mortgage rate is one thing, but buying at a 7% mortgage rate is something completely different. And so for a lot of people in those situations, you might be one yourself or you might know a few yourself, it's not a question of, am I comfortable with this monthly payment? It's really a question of, can I get a home loan at all? And so when the bottom falls out from the buyer pool in a lot of these neighborhoods, you see the difference in the price be revealed. Whereas when you look at neighborhoods like the North End, where, yeah, you have some first-time home buyers, but you also have a larger array of different types of step-up home buyers who might want a larger home for a growing family, or downsizers, or people buying a second home. What you end up having is a greater degree of price stability, even when the market experiences a shock. So moving forward, I think we can expect that to continue. And that's roughly how I would describe our neighborhood right now in the current environment. We're not a hot seller's market like we were a couple of years ago, but it's certainly not a market in decline either. I think it's safe to call us more of a balanced, moderate market than anything else. What we typically are seeing is sale prices that are roughly the same as list price. Bidding wars are not that common, at least as of now. And while the time on market has increased a little, during COVID, the average time on market was the weekend. Now it's increased to about 12 days on average to get a home under contract, typically. Now, 12 days is still historically pretty fast, but compared to what we're used to, it's a little bit of an increase. One interesting change that we have seen year over year has less to do with sale prices and more to do with listing prices. Because as I'm sure you've seen, it's much more common now for sellers to have to drop the list price to attract a buyer. In fact, if you look at the typical sale price back in 2022, the typical sale price was about 3% lower on average than the average original list price compared to 2023, last year, when it actually increased to 4%. So what that means is that this behavior of sellers dropping the list price to attract that buyer is just becoming more common. Something that sellers got used to given the cooler market conditions. But why did the market cool at all in the first place? Well, as you probably have guessed, the answer is simple: interest rates. But it's not simply the interest rates that we have right now, it's the disparity between current mortgage rates and pandemic mortgage rates. Because the fact is, over 80% of Americans with a mortgage currently have a rate 5% or under. So what you have, or what you have had, is a situation where basically no one wants to do anything, where people sitting on those 3% pandemic era mortgages don't want to move and pay a higher price for a higher rate. And you have a lot of nervous first-time home buyers who are just reluctant to do anything because they either can't get a loan or the monthly payments just intimidate them. So that's largely what's slowed down the market. As for where we're going, it all comes down to the same thing: interest rates. We have seen much more progress on this front. As of October of last year, we saw a high point in decades, with the average 30-year fixed rate being about 8%. Nothing happened during that time of the year. And we've now seen a trend closer to the mid to low 6% range. The Federal Reserve signaling that there might be more rate cuts coming to the prime rate is certainly going to help matters as well. So that's ultimately what's going to determine what kind of year 2024 is for housing. If rates continue to drop, especially if it goes below 6% on average, then you can expect, if not a hot market, certainly a noticeably warmer market. If rates plateau or rise, then the market will follow accordingly, either being a relatively stable or even a cooler market. It really just comes down to where those rates go relative to COVID rates. Finally, a word on recessions, that elusive recession that economists have been talking about for the last 2 years. And it's 50-50 if we have one. It may increasingly look more likely that we might see a unicorn in the form of a so-called soft landing, where inflation gets tamed but without wrecking the economy. And if that happens, then everyone's a winner. But even if we do have a recession, which no one can predict with any certainty, but if we do have one, I am pretty confident about two things happening. One is that mortgage rates will fall even further, because that's what always happens with recessions. And two, property values are largely going to remain the same. There's not going to be a crash. And the reason for that is pretty simple. So many people are still holding on to those pandemic era mortgage rates that is artificially going to constrict supply. Because remember, price is a reflection of supply and demand. And for property values to really crash like they did in 2008, you would have to see an enormous expansion of housing supply, of homes being listed on the market. And with so many people either having free and clear ownership or just really attractive interest rates, that's not going to happen. So the artificial constriction of supply in some ways is the saving grace for price stability in the market, assuming we have a recession at all. Overall, whether we're talking about mortgage rates, recessions, or just how the market works in general, if there's one takeaway that I'd like you to have about our neighborhood here in the North End, it's this: the defining characteristic of our neighborhood is resiliency. The North End, besides being a lovely place to work and live, is a stable neighborhood, and we can expect that to remain a fixture of our neighborhood and our housing market long into the future. So wherever you are in the process, if you're just a homeowner, you're thinking of selling, or maybe you're considering moving to the neighborhood and being one of our neighbors, we'd love to have you. I'm always happy to answer your questions. Feel free to reach out anytime. This is Ibsen with Windermere Professional Partners. Hope you have a wonderful start to your new year.